Hey guys, Riot released a update on the Vanguard change to League of Legends, and so we want to do kind of a in-depth, full-scale read-through of their article to see how the anti-cheat is going so far and how successful it's been. We're also really interested, of course, in the topics that I've covered, like how many bots did they ban, how many scripters did they ban, and what effect are those changes going to have on the rank ladder. So we've talked about before, obviously banning scripters in high elo for players like me who are in GM means I'm going to be able to win more games because I'm not playing versus as many cheaters. And so for people who are playing the game legitimately, they're going to be going up in rank, while accounts that were previously cheating are going to go down. And so you're going to see a shift upwards, which is really great for me, a slight shift upwards in high elo players who were playing the game legitimately and fairly, doing better as those accounts are either abandoned and no longer competing on the ladder, or end up actually queuing up and losing games now that they're no longer able to cheat. So that's going to be interesting. And then for lower ranks, banning bot accounts, especially bot accounts that were not just getting to level 30 and then being sold to actual players, but accounts that were being botted in ranked games to either get it to a certain rank or de-rank it to a certain rank, which was easier. Iron accounts are more valuable because players want to be able to play all the way through every rank, and it's very hard to place there, without like really griefing if you're a Smurf. So a lot of people are interested in buying iron accounts, especially iron 4 accounts, because they start with the lowest MMR. And so those accounts are kind of highly sought after because there's not very many of them. And it allows people to do things like win 100 games in a row on their main champion and weird stuff like that. So kind of some OP.GG obsessed KDA players and win rate enjoyers might be interested in buying Iron 4 accounts. And so there might be very terrible bots that are deranking these accounts. Of course, some players are doing it as well in a lot of third world countries in order to make money and things like that. But there are also probably a lot of deranking bots. And because those bots are going to be banned, or more and more likely to be banned with Vanguard, the shift that we would expect is that actually a lot of bronze and silver players are going to be pulled back in the rank distribution a little bit, because if there's supposed to be a certain percentage of players in iron or a certain percentage of players in bronze, but a lot of those accounts have been banned for not being real players, then the real players who are still playing in bronze or in iron or silver are probably going to go backwards to fill the void. So that's kind of an interesting conundrum there at the lower end of the ladder that we've talked about before. Okay, so let's see what they have to say. Greetings, travelers. It's now been almost 8 megaseconds since we released Vanguard for League of Legends, and in that unfathomable amount of time, there have been several highlights, a few lowlights, and at least one Vanguard cosplay. I don't know how to say this. Hot couture? We're going to share the first two things with you now in a continuation of our steadfast attempts to become both the loudest and the most transparent anti-cheat team in PC gaming. But before we do that, please consider also reading the article we published prior to Vanguard's release as a palate cleansing 14-course appetizer. One philosophical amuse bouche, I'm not a French enjoyer, it is what it is, that we should get out of the way early is that while we'll keep working on bettering the Vanguard LoL integration and cheaters will keep working on their cheats, we're not going to relitigate the decision to utilize this technology. All anti-cheat methods trade friction for effectiveness, and where we position ourselves on that curve demonstrates how seriously Riot takes its competitive experiences. The free-to-play model encounters too many unwinnable problems when the bans can't stick to the bad actors, including for behaviors like feeding, toxicity, and boosting. It's okay if kernel anti-cheat just isn't your bag, but we're not going to wait around for the PC platform to offer security features sufficient to support the games we want to make. Until that day, we genuinely believe that an effective anti-cheat is the best way to keep League thriving. All right, on to the rest of the meal. I'm not Mirage of Penguins, so we can skip that part. how it's going. Like any decent sandwich. Oh no, is this analogy going to continue for the whole article? Here at Vanguard's, we put the bread on top. In that regard, updating LoL's anti-cheat has achieved a great many of our initial goals, some to the degree that several people have even considered releasing Vanguard 2. Okay, no one thought that, and anti-cheat updates are about as fun as putting gloves on a cat. It's just the most random. But there have been several immediate wins from bringing LoL's anti-cheat system into the century that probably aren't too large of a surprise. Fewer scripters. So we can see here in this chart that before, the percentage of games that included a scripter, depending on the time frame, was hovering between 3, 4, even 5, 6%. And since Vanguard has been released, we can see here, it's gone down from, peak of around almost 6%, and it's gone down to less than 1% of games. So about half of 1% of games include a scripter. That would be 1 in 200 games has a scripter nowadays, as opposed to 6 in 100 before, or 12 in 200. So that is a very significant decrease in the percentage of games with a scripter. And we can also see here the ban waves and the amount of accounts that were getting banned. And so we can see that they are doing a good job of steadily banning lots of scripting accounts. The percentage of ranked games with at least one scripter in them and bans issued explicitly for scripting in competitive play. Legend has it that I love this graph so much. Okay, we can skip all that. The first and most obvious victory here is that there are far fewer cheaters in the game now. Above is LoL's ranked scripting rate, graphed alongside daily anti-cheat ban volume, and bucketed based on the system in which the ban originated. Pac-Man is the old anti-cheat, and Vanguard is the new one. A significant portion of the immediate reduction in scripters is due to Vanguard's preventative features, but as might be evident from the manifestation of the hardware ban category, further reductions have been accomplished through detecting cheaters that heroically still tried to cheat post-Vanguard, bravely sacrificing all of their accounts to see if the anti-cheat had a ban limit. It didn't. Since the release of Vanguard, we have banned over 175,000 accounts for cheating, but more importantly, our ranked scripting rate fell below 1% for the first time in nearly 4 years. As of the time of this writing, only 1 in every 200 ranked games is played with a scripter, and I figure it's finally safe for me to complete my placement games. I'll for sure still land in Iron 2 with a crisp 10% win rate, but at least for now, I'll only have Zed's entire existence as a champion to blame. The most recent spike in ban throughput on July 8th was the direct result of a little something Riot likes to call summer break, and our returning from it was accompanied by a sudden burst in raw anti-cheat energy, nuking 35,000 scripters in just under 48 hours. While many were stunned to find that anti-cheaters even needed to sleep, please be assured that most of us are nearly 100% detectably human. We too love simple pleasures like looking at trees and ingesting nutrients, so a good week of respite, only serve to strengthen our resolve. There are also fewer bots. So as we said, getting rid of scripters, especially if their scripts are really good, they're going to land them in higher and higher ranks. For any player who is playing at a rank, it could even be in Platinum or Emerald, with someone who is scripting, through that rank, getting rid of all of those games where someone was having an unfair advantage over you because they were scripting, and it was more likely that someone was scripting on the other team than your team because there's 5 potential scripters on the other team and only 4 potential scripters on your team. If you're not scripting, you're at a disadvantage in terms of climbing. But it's very, very minimal if they've reduced the number of games down 0.5%. And in fact, going from it being like, 6% of games down to 0.5% is very significant, because it means in any rank you would have been facing a scripter at, you're going to be able to climb just a little bit easier because you're playing against other legitimate players. And now all these players who had an unfair advantage on you, all these accounts are gone or no longer scripting. And there's also fewer bots. So the lol botting game hours, we can see, has dropped off a cliff. And this is in thousands. So, for example, 100 would be 100,000, and 1,000 would be 1 million. So you can see that they were at a peak right before they introduced Vanguard of about 1 million game hours played per day by bots. And we can see that now that's really fallen. Now, it's very interesting because what we can see here as well is that most of the games, we can see it, AI, so this would be co-op versus AI or bot games. Then we can see green normal games, and we can see yellow being other, or would probably be ranked or other modes. And what's interesting here is we can see that the vast majority of bots were being used to level accounts in those bot games in AI, and some were being used to level accounts in normal games, or were set up to play normal games for some reason or another, maybe to earn chests or something. I'm trying to think of why, or maybe now that there's that 10. Oh, that's probably part of it. Is you can see before here there was not very many bots being played in normal games. So this must be where bots had to play 10 normal games. They made it so that you had to play 10 normal games before you could play ranked for the first time. And it looks like a lot of these accounts that were being created, they opted to start using bots. So that's probably this, all of a sudden we're actually using bots to play normal games. It's probably coming from requiring those 10 normal games in order to be able to play ranked right away. Now we can see that there's a very small percentage of bots that are being played in ranked. So when we talk about that as a problem, maybe it's not that big, but it's kind of hard to tell relatively, because really what we need to know is what percentage of iron accounts are bots versus actual players. Obviously now it's not going to be very many, but obviously that is really the question, because there could just be so many accounts being leveled to level 30 with these co-op versus AI games and normal games, that the ranked games that are being played by bots is very small in comparison. But it doesn't matter that it's small in comparison to the number of co-op versus AI games that are being played. What matters is whether there are a significant percentage of the players that are in iron, and even something like just 5% of the accounts in iron being bot accounts or something like that makes a significant difference on the rank distribution. That's the difference between a bronze 4 player being pulled back into iron 1 and them actually getting to be bronze 1 because they're winning or better than a bunch of bots. So that makes a difference as well. But we can see that the number of botting hours went way, way, way down, and so it's like next to non-existent. So they've done an incredible job with that, getting rid of bots to level up accounts. Unfortunately, and maybe some of the accounts will get banned, and that's good, especially for like toxic players that are buying accounts and playing over and over again. But for a player like me, for example, who's like a long-term veteran player, my concern is that people have already reaped the rewards from this, because I already have a bunch of Smurf accounts. Now, I got to be careful because I didn't buy my Smurf accounts. I actually hand leveled them. And that's actually true, because I did buy one Smurf account, unranked account. At one point I did buy one, and then it got banned after I'd climbed it all the way to diamond. And so having that experience, I never wanted to buy a bot account, bot level account ever again. And so, because of that, I hand level all my accounts. But a lot of people, I guess you could say, who already have Smurf accounts, right? Those accounts are there. And so I'm never going to need another account ever again. I think I probably have like 10, level 30 accounts. And I'm not even someone who Smurfs that much. That's, the truth. I really don't Smurf that much. and I have 10. Now I'm a GM player, obviously somebody who's played a lot of League and been around since end of season 2 or the beginning of season 3. Started playing ranked at the beginning of season 3, so maybe that's part of why. So I've had a long time to accumulate accounts. But I easily have an account for every role, multiple accounts to play my main role on. So because of that, what I worry about is, okay, we've gotten rid of them now, but are all of the people who had bought accounts, who already have 10 accounts that are level 30 because of this existing in the past, if they're just all keeping those accounts, those Smurf accounts are just still going to be around. So hopefully this will reduce some Smurfing, because it's harder to get your hands on a level 30 account and a lot more tedious and time consuming to do that. But people are still going to do it. And a lot of people are still already going to have their accounts. So, that's still kind of an issue. But it's definitely good that they're making it harder for people to make the accounts. And that will reduce some smurfing. Now, they say here that one of the ways that they detect whether it's a bot or whether it's not a real player is if like the client resolution is really low, because they're trying to run multiple instances, so they're making the resolution as small and as less intensive for the computer as possible. And if they're averaging like less than 15 FPS. So those are ways that they're helping to detect people who are using bots. Anyways, Vanguard's anti-virtual machine techniques put a hefty dent in the average programmable coffee maker's ability to brew a League of Legends session, dropping total hours spent botting from north of 1 million a day to less than 5,000. Many botting farms were struck with lasting emotional turmoil, and if you played a co-op versus AI, you may have actually seen them standing in your fountain having a deep introspective thought. This rapid onset of bot paralysis was the simple result of their not running Vanguard. No Vanguard session, no connection to the server. Some bots have tried to trickle back in an old OS X VMs, but that's something we're saving for dessert. Shortly after releasing Vanguard, we also cleaned up 3.5 million bot accounts that hadn't yet been sold. So that's great. And the idea there is to slowly dehydrate the market for secondary accounts. Bots are a big part of the engine that powers competitive LoL abuse, both for supplying boosters with new Smurfs on which to queue alongside their customers, and also for supplying scripters with new accounts on which to play. I'm actually not sure you can call either of these things playing League of Legends, so we'll want to stay extremely vigilant on smart toasters to maximize the misery per second of our other punishments. Faster bans. You may have experienced a fleeting moment of relief at the prospect that I'd abandoned the insufferable sandwich metaphor. That's true, I was actually beginning to enjoy the article. But like all struggling writers, is someone working for Riot really a writer? I wrestle with my artistic commitment to the literary and nutritional mediums. So these next graphs can be considered the mayonnaise. I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. And a lot like actual mayonnaise, they're the entire point of the sandwich. Okay, they're banning people faster than before. Other interesting changes. So this was really interesting to me because I think when we think of scripting, a lot of us think of like Xerath as like the big scripting champion, but it turns out that actually most people are scripting on 80 carry champions. And that kind of makes sense, right? Because 80 carry champions get to deal a ton of damage. They don't have to hit their abilities. They can just, auto attack and dodge, and that's going to make a really effective 80 carry. So the script doesn't need to like make them better at hitting their abilities or anything like that. And in some ways, maybe that would be even less detectable. So actually we can see that certain champions in ADC, Kog'Maw, Twitch, Karthus, Sivir, Vayne, Samira, Zeri, Ezreal, Kalista, were the top champion win rates that were being distorted by scripting. And this is really interesting now because it's going to be interesting to see if champions like Kog'Maw and Twitch and other champions like this, these really auto attack reliant hyper carry 80 carries, which I actually love to play with on Braum, it'd be interesting to see if their win rate was inflated by such an amount that actually the champion's power level was kept in check because there were too many people scripting on the champion. And so it'd be really interesting to see now if, for example, on a champion like Kog'Maw or Twitch or Zeri, if they can kind of actually buff some of these champions and give them a little bit of power back now that the people playing them are actually legitimately playing the champion. Because, you know, we look at a champion like Twitch, for example, and we can see that the total win rate, you know, was for Diamond Plus players was significantly different. We can see that like before Vanguard, Twitch was winning like 53 point. Oh, there were some nerfs though that corresponded with this as well. But you know, generally speaking, we can see that the win rate dropped on Twitch like a full 2% or something like that. So I'd be really curious to see if oh, it actually looks like there wasn't a whole lot going on with Ezreal, by the way, because his win rate stayed even. But yeah, it's really interesting to see that it was 80 carry champions and not like Xerath every time. And I wonder if that means, again, because I'm playing against them in bot lane, if for me and other legitimate support and 80 carry players, if our games are going to feel nicer, especially because I'm playing in high elo where a lot of scripters are playing and getting to before they got banned, at least before. I wonder if they're going to be able to, you know, allocate some power back to some of these champions that were being heavily abused by scripters now that the people who are playing them are legit. And I'd love to see that because a lot of these champions they were choosing to script on because of their effectiveness and their undetectability, like hyper carry 80 carries, that are just dealing their damage through auto attacking and become really effective when they're using their movement speed efficiently with their auto attacks and when they're dodging important abilities and stuff like that. I wonder if we'll get to see a higher power level Kog'Maw, Twitch, and Vayne and stuff like that come back with, you know, Braum or something. You know, so you love to see that. So we can see these deltas here. They're saying that this is what they believe how much more a cheater wins on average. Basically, they were saying that on Zeri, for example, you know, a cheater was winning almost somewhere between like 15 and 20% more games than, you know, someone who wasn't scripting and playing the champion. And so this is just, you know, kind of insane. So really glad to see that go. Let's see. The above dashboard is monitoring the 9 most popular scripting champions for any changes that may have resulted from Vanguard's deployment, and because of a veritable buffet of mouse clicks, is something scripts can serve faster than a human. The majority of them are ADCs. The timeline on the left is how much more a champion wins when they're cheating than when they're not. And the graph on the right is that same champion's total win rate measured 60 days before and after Vanguard. To ensure a competitive sample, all games included here are ones in which the player on the identified champion was then rated platinum or above. Okay. We can also see that there's very minimal false positives. So this is the ban reversals by type. And they're saying, you know, that the most common is like if your account is compromised and was like hacked by somebody looking to script, or they were able to get access to your password or something like that. And so about 1% of bans are reversed due to account compromise, but even that has gone down. And we can also see that there can be things like shared hardware, like sharing a computer with a family member or roommate or something like this. And so we can see that that's a very small, you know, 0.01%, but that this has also gone down. And so Riot is essentially saying that they're more positive than ever before, that they're getting less false positives, less bans because of shared hardware or account compromise, and they're very much more accurately able to tell whether somebody's actually scripting or not. And we can see that the false positive rate is extremely low, barely registering here at like 0.01% or, you know, even less than that. And so that's really good. Let's see what we've got here. So we've got some additional technical things that they're talking about here, but it's really more of the technical aspects of how Vanguard's working, and probably them remedying some problems, but really nothing that affects what we're interested in as players. Vanguard event near you. Let's see. Yeah, they're just talking about some more problems that they encountered. So let's see what's next up for anti-cheat on LoL. Anti-cheat is never finished, and while Vanguard has reduced our surface area and increased their barrier to entry, cheaters are always on the hunt for new ways to gain unfair advantage. Here's a look at a few things we're cooking up to make sure they stay famished. Powering up. While many cheat developers have thrown in the towel, we're thrilled to report that several did not get the message, and we can hardly wait to turn on more of Vanguard for them to play with. Bans thus far have been only an aperitif. This might be one of his culinary references again, and we are extremely confident in our kitchen's preparedness for this service. Many cheaters can often get stuck in the denial stage of the grief cycle. So we think of each ban as extinguishing a flame on a candelabra of hope. By gradually allowing every cheater to be swallowed by complete darkness, they can finally achieve true enlightenment. On-demand Vanguard. As was foretold, a future will eventually arrive where we can rely on the security features of Windows to protect its own kernel instead of protecting it from boot with a driver. This will allow us the opportunity to start our anti-cheat services when the game client runs, provided the end user has opted into all of those features. We'll have more communication on this topic early next year, but if you're on Windows 11 and on a relatively recent hardware, we wanted to let you know that you won't have to tolerate the taskbar icon forever, even though we worked very hard on Vanguard's logo. So this is really important. Obviously, a lot of people, Chinese company, don't really like the idea that Vanguard is running constantly in the background all the time that they've started their computer. Of course, if you really don't want to, you could turn it off and then turn it on and then restart your PC with it on, if you really wanted to do that. But a lot of people don't like that. What they seem to be implying here is that, once Windows gets its stuff together and Microsoft gets its stuff together, they'll be able to, do what Vanguard is doing anyways, and enable them to secure the startup of the computer at the kernel level, so that they can either report to Vanguard what happened when it started up, or just make sure that nothing outside of Windows and normal drivers and stuff like that are starting up with the computer, and then you'll be able to start Vanguard probably not even manually. Of course, they'll probably make it automated so that when you open League, the anti-cheat will just kind of open and run in the background like a lot of games do. Might not even need an icon or a separate application or anything for it. And of course, that would be wonderful. So let's see, we've got boosting detection. Boosting refers to the behavior deliberately with or on lower rated accounts for the purposes of increasing their rank standing. Detection is something the anti-team cheat has not touched since 2018, and we're extremely excited about now having the fingerprint technology sufficient to tackle it once more. I think this is really big, right? Obviously, if they've kind of tackled the cheating problem and the botting problem, they can move on to other things, and so they can start to focus on cracking down on like boosting accounts and other things that are going on, potentially even working towards doing something about how many people are smurfing. And so this is a really good step in the right direction, because it's going to free up a lot of people at Riot to work on, some other priorities, related to this, like boosting. So this is good. And obviously they have, like they said, they have more, when they say fingerprinting technology, they essentially have more of an idea of whether an account is legitimate or whether something kind of fraudulent is going on with the account. Vanguard's giving them a better idea of what's happening. And that's going to enable them to detect boosters and account sharing and that kind of thing better. So that's really good. We plan to focus the majority of our efforts here on detecting boosters queuing with customers on freshly deranked Smurfs, and will reward those accounts with bans lasting the rest of the season, Layer 1. Players that repeatedly queue with boosters affected by these punishments will also receive a similar vacation, Layer 2. Should any be brave enough to fully share their account with a boosting service, it will be similarly be detected as a Smurf under Layer 1, effectively closing the loop. There's still a lot of work left on this one, but we plan to have it banging on 8 out of 8 cylinders by next summer. And then, of course, they're planning on releasing Vanguard for Mac. So if you didn't know, there's actually no anti-cheat on Mac still, so they can still just be doing the same thing on Mac. And a lot of scripters, we're seeing very good progress now, but they will get better. And so the fact that there is not a version for Mac yet means that a lot of scripters and cheaters are going to just move over to Mac for the meantime, at least while they're still able to abuse that, especially if they feel like it's their last hurrah or whatever, being able to use their cheats or whatever it is. They might feel like, switching over to a Mac in order to be able to do that before it's completely kind of, for the most part, shut out of the game. So that we might see an uptick actually after these graphs that are really nice looking that we've seen. In fact, that uptick may have already started, as their system has been put in place and cheaters are going to get better at getting around it and use other systems like Mac. But once Vanguard comes to Mac, that'll close another section there. And that's pretty much the gist of it. So hope that you guys learned something. Hope that this helps you understand where Riot's going with dealing with boosters, with getting rid of bot accounts and all these accounts that are being leveled up by bots to be sold. Obviously, some of the bot accounts were probably deranking accounts in ranked, and that's going to result in a slight pullback of lower ranked players. Obviously, scripters, especially who are mostly climbing to really high ranks with some really effective cheats. And obviously players who are using scripts are oftentimes very invested in the game or like know a lot about how the game works and stuff like that in order to be able to use and develop them. And so a lot of those players are affecting high ranked games more often than not. And, those players being banned who are cheating before is going to open up climbing to more legitimate players, which of course is a great thing for the competitive integrity of the game, especially in high elo. And Vanguard's coming to Mac, and hopefully Windows will update their security protections so that we can have Vanguard run when we start League automatically without having to have it run all the time on our computer and people quitting the game because they think it's Chinese spyware. And maybe that'll even bring some players who quit over Vanguard back to the game, once Windows gets around to doing that. So, we'll see what happens there. And then so that's kind of like long-term. They're going to work on detecting boosting by next summer, now that they've dealt with a lot of the botting and scripting problem. And we're also going to hope that, sometime, who knows how long Windows is going to take in Microsoft, but hopefully they'll get around to doing that within the year or a year or two, or maybe 3 or something like that, so that, we're not stuck with this Vanguard system forever, or, running it when you start up your PC forever. Okay, good luck in solo queue and have a wonderful day.